Hi there, I'm Kim Fulcher. I'm a life coach, and this is Groove TV, where I'm going to give you just a little bit of advice for your life. Today we're going to talk guilt. Specifically, I'm going to teach you how to make your guilt work for you in 3 simple steps. Before we get to the steps, how often are you feeling guilty? I was doing some research for this blog and I came across some pretty startling statistics. It turns out working moms and dads feel guilty 23 times a week. And working moms, we feel guilty every single day. Are you part of that I feel guilty every single day club? Not really one you would have wanted to join on purpose, right? But if you're a parent, you're pretty much destined to feel some level of guilt. And even if you're not, there are lots of other buckets that guilt comes in. We're going to talk about them today. So let's dive right in here. It's important for you to understand what is going on with your guilt, because step number 1, when you understand the science of guilt, you're going to get that guilt doesn't just make you feel bad. Guilt makes you fat. Yeah, I have your attention now, don't I? It also weakens your immune system. It makes you more prone to some pretty serious diseases, and it lowers your libido. So it makes you kind of miserable and probably a little bit miserable to be around. We want to get control of this right now. So here's what happens with the science of it. When you feel guilt, what goes on in your body is something called a stress response. And all that means is your body releases hormones that are designed to help you take care of yourself. You've probably heard of something called the fight or flight response. Well, your body releases a hormone called cortisol, and that's supposed to help with the flight part of fight or flight. This worked great back in the day when you had to run from a saber-toothed tiger, but now that the saber-toothed tiger is just in your own head and you don't really need that cortisol, well, what happens is it impacts your insulin, and insulin is another hormone, and this guy makes you store fat. So when you step on that worry treadmill and start pumping cortisol in your body while you're worrying, what you're actually doing is contributing to that spare tire that's starting to form around your middle, which is shocking and so unfair, don't you think? Because here's the thing, stress fat, it goes right around your middle. And not only is that super uncomfortable for you just moving around in the physical world, it's dangerous because visceral fat, which is deep internal belly fat, that forms as a result of stress fat too, and that actually contributes to cancer and to lowering your body's ability to manage your blood sugar, which leads to type 2 diabetes. So this is life-altering stuff here. This isn't about just making sure you don't feel stressed because you feel guilty. This is about you making yourself sick or not based on the way you manage your guilt. Okay, so let's manage it. So step number 2, what I want you to do is I want you to get with your guilt pattern. Guilt is showing up in your life in a very patterned way, and a guilt pattern is really simple. There are 3 parts. There's a trigger plus a guilt type, and those 2 things together equal a response. So you've got a trigger, a guilt type, and a response. So first we're going to talk trigger and guilt type. Okay. So a trigger is just like it sounds. It's whatever happens in your environment that sets you in to your guilty thinking. And usually triggers have to do with either something someone says to you and then what you make that mean about yourself in your head, or something you say to yourself and what you make that mean about yourself in your own head. So a trigger is about what's going on in your environment, and you want to pay attention to what triggers you to feel guilty, because when you start to put your arms around your own guilt pattern, you can get really proactive about how you manage your life. You can make sure you have fewer opportunities to encounter guilty triggers, or if you've got a situation that just constantly triggers your guilt, you can figure out a way to deal with it so that you're more prone to peace, right? And you can do this, my sister, I promise you. So once we have identified your trigger, then the next thing we want to do is I need you to look at your guilt, and you're going to want to look away from it because it makes you uncomfortable and maybe even a little bit overwhelmed. But when you look at it, you take your power back from it. So when you look at your guilt, what I want you to do is categorize it. And when I'm working with a client, we work in 1 of 7 buckets. So I'm going to tell you what those buckets are right now. Now, what happens is that when you begin to focus on the bucket you're going to categorize your guilt into, you take a lot of the heaviness away from it and you just get really practical and tactical, and then you can be in charge of your response. So, okay, 7 buckets, here we go. So the first one, mom guilt, right? And we talked about that a little bit earlier. Pretty much the moment you gave birth, maybe even the moment you found out you were expecting, you kind of signed up for a little bit of guilt, because we want to do a good job being a parent, right? Of course you do. So mom guilt has to do with your rules. And what typically happens is that you adopt rules from your family of origin or from your colleagues or from really even society at large, and you start to try to accomplish those rules in order to be a good mom. The challenge is when you haven't really looked at your rules, you can be making them way too hard. So we're gonna talk about that more in step number 3. But first, around mom guilt, I just want you to take a look at whether or not your rules are too hard for you to actually win at, okay? So then we have our second bucket, and this is around shoulds. These are around other people's rules, because you have a lot of people who will vote on how you should do your life if you let them. And all I want you to do here is just know that if you're feeling guilty because you didn't do something you think you should do, you probably need to take another look at those rules. Okay, third bucket, time guilt, right? There will never be enough time in your day to take care of everything that is important to you and everything that is important to everyone else in your life. It just doesn't work that way. There are always trade-offs. So you're gonna need to get good at clarifying what your priorities are and then saying yes or no based on those priorities. And here's the kicker. You're even gonna have to start making trade-offs between your priorities. Think, spending time with your family or getting your workout or spending time on your dream project. Right, so you have to recognize that in order to say yes to one thing, you're going to have to say no to many others simultaneously. And again, you want to take a look at the rules you're using to decide whether or not something's really going on in the area of time that you need to take another look at. Okay, fourth bucket, disappointing people guilt. Ugh, this one is so hard. So as you start to say no, as you start to speak up for yourself, as you start to set boundaries, you're going to disappoint people. And you must develop the strength to withstand disappointing other people, because at the end of your life, you don't want to find out that the only person you really let down was yourself, right? So you really want to, again, take a look at what are the rules you're using to determine whether or not you can disappoint people and whether or not you need to feel guilty when you do. Okay, fifth bucket, another big one, money guilt. In those same surveys I was looking at, 57% of working moms said they felt guilty anytime they spent money on themselves. And not for a second am I suggesting that you put yourself before your kids on your list. I know that's not going to happen. I just want you to put yourself on your own list, because the truth of the matter is being a mom is no joke. You need to bring your A game. You need to be your best self. And your children are learning from you every single day based on how you're showing up in your life. So it's important to continue to invest in yourself, in your personal development, in your professional development, in your education, in your grooming, in your relaxation, right? You must continue to grow in order to do the best job possible for your children, right? Okay, sixth bucket, we're almost there. Now, this bucket is what I call good guilt. This is around misalignment guilt. Sometimes you're supposed to feel guilty. Sometimes you're supposed to feel bad, because if you have behaved outside of the norm of what you think is okay or outside of your own code of conduct, then your guilt is actually calling your attention to look at where you've behaved outside of code and invite you to make some changes, right? So this is guilt that is uncomfortable but is worthy of celebrating because it will help you grow. And then finally, in the seventh bucket, we have shame, right? This is our shame bucket. And Dr. Brené Brown is a preeminent researcher and teacher and author who writes on shame and shame resiliency. I'm a huge fan of her work. She gives us a great definition to really create a distinction between guilt and shame. And she basically says, guilt is about what you do. Shame is about who you think you are. So here in the seventh bucket, if you're feeling guilt, but that guilt is really eating away at you about something you think is wrong with you, or if you're thinking you're bad or flawed, if you are feeling bad about yourself as a human, that is not guilt, that's shame. And that needs your attention because shame is a malignancy. It will literally eat your life force. So you need to take care of it. And let's take care of it right now. Step number 3, grow with your guilt. There are 3 paths to respond here. And the way we respond is based on the bucket your guilt is in. So super simple. If you had guilt in buckets 1 to 5, what you want to do is adjust your rules. You want to take a look at the rules you're using and determine whether or not you're making it too hard for yourself to succeed. Are you setting yourself up to feel guilty with rules that are not actually achievable? And if you are, then there's no shame here, no shame game, right? All you're gonna do is adjust those rules so that you feel less guilt and more peace, right? Okay, then the second potential solution, if you are dealing with guilt that is in your 6th bucket, right? This is our guilt around misalignment. It is good guilt. Then what you need to do is take a look at how you behaved. And what you want to take a look at is what you did that you would do differently next time, right? What you've learned, and whether or not you need to have a conversation or to make an apology to someone, right? Because this is when you've made a mistake or you've not followed through when you should have, right? What we want to do here when we're responding to misalignment guilt is change our behavior and grow. And then finally, our 3rd method of response, and this has to do with our 7th bucket with shame. What you want to do with shame is get help to process it. So I'm going to make 3 suggestions. Number 1, read, get information, learn about what shame is, because the more you shine the light on it, the less scary it becomes. If you Google shame or shame resilience, you'll find a host of resources. And as I mentioned earlier, the books of Dr. Brené Brown are fantastic on this subject. Now, the other thing you want to do, the second step you can take, is to reach out and get some one-on-one help. Shame requires a great deal of TLC. Work with a therapist or a licensed counselor or a support group that specializes in shame resilience. You want to, again, shine the light on those things you're harboring and make sure that you're working with a professional who's skilled in helping you do that. There is no shame in asking for help. I myself have done some of my best growth work on the couch of a great therapist. If you need help processing your shame, please reach out and get it. And then finally, and this is great news, as it turns out, you can behave your way into feeling worthy. And that's where I come in. Because when you begin to set goals and follow through, when you begin to behave in a way that you can trust and that you find worthy, you begin to feel more worthy, and that contributes to shame resilience. So if you haven't already joined my coaching program, please enter your email at kimfulcher.com. You get free coaching. The program is designed to help you know, like, and trust yourself, and it will do you a world of good while you're in the process of transforming your shame. That is it for the week. We have done so much good work. Please comment below. Let me know, what step are you going to be practicing with this week? Are you going to focus on identifying your triggers? Are you going to categorize your guilt? Are you going to actually respond to guilt in a productive way? Let me know what your focus is, and let me know when you bump up against a challenge. I love hearing from you. You can also come over to Facebook. I am kim.fulcher1, or Instagram, I'm kimfulcher123. I post an empowerment quote every day, and there are just thousands of us, hundreds of us talking on the empowerment quote every day and talking about life, supporting each other. And finally, if you would like to get in touch with me, you can always email me, kim@kimberlyfulcher.com. I am here for your empowerment. You are why I am in business. You can take control of your guilt. You do not have to surrender to everything that is coming at you without showing up and meeting it face to face in your full power. You are fierce. I want you to remember that. No matter what is happening, I want you to remember that life is happening for you, and you so totally got this. You really do, sister. Now, if today made an impact for you, share this with your girls. Do your empowerment work together. Thanks, guys. See ya.